and Mac's voice.
Cool, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Mac Thayer. I live at Smith and 9th Street in Gowanus and am going to be giving a presentation on the GowanusLands.org park initiative. Thank you very much, CB6, for hosting this and giving us the chance to give the presentation. Ty, is my volume okay? Can people hear me, do you think?
You sound good to me. If anyone is having a problem hearing Mac.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, well, I will try to keep the presentation length at about 10 minutes. It may go over a little longer. I guess if it's running too long, or just let me know, Ty, if there's anything I should do. And I understand that there may be an opportunity for Q&A after the presentation. Is that correct?
Once the presentation's over, then either I believe Mark or possibly David will then take questions. We'll try to get everyone who has a question.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Well, I'm ready to begin. I'm not sure where the presentation is. I don't see it.
I'm going to share it on the screen now.
Okay, thanks. Okay, great. So this is a presentation for Public Place Park, which is a community-led proposal for a world-class park in Gowanus. Our organization is GowanusLands.org. Next slide, please. I wanted to run just through a few agenda items. I want to talk about our group. I want to talk about the importance of parks in general, the current status of open space in Gowanus, our view on public place, our vision for the park, a little bit about organization and funding for the park, and then lastly, some thoughts on the broader rezoning and affordable housing, since that's important to consider, and then also some closing thoughts too. So I'll just jump into it. Next slide, please. So our group was founded in May of this year by several friends and residents of Gowanus. We started a petition on our website, and I think actually it's about 800 now people have signed the petition in support of having a park on public place. Our mission is to plan and advocate for a world-class park on vacant land that is on the west side of Gowanus between 5th Street and 9th Street. And we believe in the importance of quality open space, parks, grass, trees, light, open space, and equitable access to open space in Gowanus. We also really believe in the importance of the community input process and civil discourse and respect for other people and parties, although views may be different. So that said, we're really looking forward to adding our voice to this discussion about the site, and want to just thank CB6 for the opportunity to engage with everyone and present. Next slide, please. So parks are really important. You know, they improve our physical health, they improve our psychological health. I love this quote by Maya Angelou that says, "Each of us needs to withdraw from the cares which will not withdraw from us." So true, I think. They also are really important in terms of equitable access to open space. This quote by Bruce Babbitt, I think is really telling. It says, you know, parks serve day in and day out as the primary green spaces for the majority of Americans. That's really true. I think we should value parks. They also bring communities together. You know, they're accessible to all. They promote joy, humanity. They also help with stormwater flooding and flood control. And lastly, biodiversity. It may seem like a small consideration in the urban environment, but parks are actually really important for promoting urban biodiversity. Next slide, please. So I think there's pretty wide agreement that Gowanus is underserved for open space. The overall quantity of open space is low overall and per capita. You know, there are parks, but they're relatively few. I also think that the quality of open space is low, and this is comparative, but especially as compared to other neighborhoods which have better park and open space resources. Gowanus parks are relatively small, they're paved over. There's cars, there's traffic, there's noise. This is to some extent what you get in the city, but at the same time, there are opportunities to provide more broader open space that have grass, trees, space, and light. And lastly, I just say that this has been a recurring theme that at least I've heard in the community for years, that the community has wanted and advocated for quality open space in Gowanus. Next slide, please. This is just a map from the Parks Department, which shows parks in Gowanus. And then if you go to the next slide, please. There's just a satellite image which shows the same thing, which I think is an interesting viewpoint. And you can see there are really relatively few and small parks. There's a few adjacent to Gowanus, which arguably Gowanus residents can use, but there's not a lot in Gowanus itself. Next slide, please. So we view Public Place, which is the vacant land located at Smith Street and 5th Street, as the ideal location for a large public park in Gowanus. It's a 6-acre site. It's really well situated with access for the surrounding community. The community has also wanted this site to become open space since the 1970s. Just looking back at some of the documentation and quotes around the original zoning designation, the City Planning Commission cited an overwhelming demand throughout the community for available open space. This is in 1974. And then, the site was zoned really specifically with open space and recreation uses in mind. Again, from that same City Planning Commission document, they're setting the site aside for future recreational uses by the community. So I think really there's a unique opportunity to create a world-class piece of quality open space in Gowanus. These kinds of spaces that are specifically designated to become open space and zoned for it are really rare. And we should think about that because it's just a unique asset to have. Lastly, pollution on the site and flooding pose challenges, and a park is a great option to address both of those. I think you can look at the Fresh Kills Park on Staten Island as an example of remediation done really well of a site that was really polluted that's now being cleaned up for a park. Next slide, please. So our vision for the park is a comprehensive, publicly accessible, world-class park on vacant city-owned land at Public Place and adjacent private parcels, if practical. So we envision a natural parkscape with a field, trees, walking paths, waterfront access, and natural plant species. We think that this is consistent with the historic intended use and a high level of current community support and interest. I would note that the remediation of the brownfield site poses challenges, and I think that there are open questions on the chemicals and coal tar on the site that should probably be addressed before moving forward with the park. Next slide, please. So here's an image of the site now. You can see Public Place at the top there, and then in the middle is the private site, and below as well. If you go to the next slide tag, please. You can see our proposal to basically create a large park on the Public Place site as well as the adjacent private parcels. This would be a pretty large and green open space in the heart of Gowanus. Next slide, please. So here's a view of the site now, looking from across the canal. And you can see the shorefront there. And next slide, please. And then here's our proposed rendering for what it could look like if the whole space were to be developed into a park. We envision really having a promenade there and providing access to the water, which we think is really important. Next slide, please. In terms of the organization and the funding, we would advocate following a model similar to Prospect Park, where you create organizations that can help advance the design and construction of the park, including potentially a Friends of Public Place Park organization to guide the development. And then conceivably, it's just an idea, a development corporation or some kind of autonomous entity that could really help drive the development of the park in partnership with the Parks Department. We would likely want to seek funding from a mix of city, state, and philanthropic sources, and potentially the National Grid remediation funds that have been set aside for the remediation of the site. We estimated a cost of approximately $100 million, including acquisition of adjacent sites and development of the park. If adjacent sites were not included, this would likely be lower, but we settle on that number as a ballpark figure. Not insignificant cost to create a large-scale park on the site. And we would clearly want to engage with NYC Parks to understand their thoughts on feasibility and further expertise in helping to guide the effort of developing the park. Next slide, please. So just a few thoughts on the rezoning and affordable housing, since it's pretty closely linked. We think that the need for quality open space would likely increase with the proposed residential increase of the rezoning. There's a likely, I think it's an increase from about 20,000 to 40,000 people with the rezoning. We feel that the scope of work proposals for open space are good, but also limited. And so we think that this is another reason why having a park on the site would be helpful to have for the neighborhood. We also think that the scope of work falls a little bit short on presenting a plan to study the quality of open space in the EIS. So, as we're reading the EIS, we know that there's a lot of attention to the quantity of open space and also future quality, but doesn't really provide a great baseline of the quality of existing open space that's currently in Gowanus. And so we think that more attention should be paid to that to say, hey, what is the quality of existing open space in Gowanus, and really study that more and present a plan to study that in the EIS. With respect to affordable housing, I think we just want to say first that we support stabilizing existing affordable housing and support the call for investment in the existing NYCHA units in Gowanus. We also would advocate considering if there may be options to create affordable housing without losing the public place park. And frankly, we don't know the answers to that. One thought we had, is it feasible to decrease the luxury and market rate housing components of the rezoning and build affordable housing instead? I think our thinking is just that, given there's such a high level of community interest and support in a park, and for decades, and that the park has been specifically zoned, the site has been specifically zoned for open space. Maybe it makes sense to think a little bit about if there are other options that could proceed without having to lose the park. And then lastly, we would just like to propose seeking clarity from DCP, I guess, on the status of the parkland alienation process. We had thought that if a site is specifically zoned for open space, that there was a state process that needed to be followed. And we don't know the answer on that either. It may just be helpful to just get clarification from DCP. Next slide, please. So just in closing, we feel that quality open space is important, valued, and needed in Gowanus. We think that public place is the ideal site for a large public park in Gowanus because the community has wanted it for 50 years. The site is zoned and protected specifically for open space uses. It's really a rare opportunity to have that, and a really unique opportunity to create a park. A park is feasible. It helps to address site pollution and flooding, and it also enhances urban biodiversity. We think that maybe there might be potentially viable options that could both create affordable housing and also preserve the park. So we think that maybe these should at least be identified and considered before we lose the park. We think that the scope of work, we should potentially look at that to see if we need to revise it to study the quality of open space in a little more detail. We'd like to propose seeking clarification from DCP on the status of the parkland alienation process. And then overall, I think irrespective of the end use, it seems like there are a lot of open questions about the chemicals and toxicity of the site. So we think that maybe potentially getting another set of eyes on the work through some kind of like audit or someone looking into that could be helpful, just to really ensure that community health and safety are protected. So that's it. I see I'm a little over on time. I threw some contact info up there. If anyone has any further questions, please feel free to shoot us an email at the Gmail address there. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm sorry, this is Bob Levine. I just want to make a suggestion of putting the map back up while questions come up. It might be easier for people to see the site.
Okay, we can do that. I would suggest that if you have a question, you should send it in a message to, I'm guessing Mark isn't able to see messages because he's on his phone. Maybe David can receive chats on here. Because if I'm going to share my screen, I can't receive the chats.
I could see the chats. Mark,
Yeah,
you want to call on people? Okay.
no, I would appreciate it if you can handle this. I'm on my phone. I have very little facility to deal with this properly. I did have questions that I forwarded to you and Ty about where they are in this process. I suspect not that far along, but I still would like those questions presented, even if they can't be answered now and would have to be answered at a later date. And after I sign off here, I would be happy to listen to what goes on, and I leave it in your capable hands, David.
Okay, thank you. So I'll go, Mac, I'm going to go ahead and ask you these questions that Mark referred to. And as he said, if you don't have answers right now, that's okay. And I think you might have actually answered a couple of these in your presentation. And then I'm going to turn it over to the committee's questions, and then we'll open up for public questions. The first question is, have you had any discussions with the Parks Department concerning the disposition of the site?
No, we have not. With respect to disposition, sorry, what does that refer to?
Well, converting it to a park.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we haven't yet. At this point, it's still just a concept that we've been discussing in the community. So we haven't formally engaged or really reached out to Parks Department.
Okay. Are you working with any landscape architects or engineers in terms of establishing your vision? And if so, who are they?
No, we have not gotten there yet. We had an initial rendering prepared, but haven't taken that next step of talking with landscape architects or engineers. We're really a grassroots organization, so we haven't started spending money for that.
Sure. No, that's okay. I think you had an estimate in there. Did you propose an estimate for the park in your presentation?
Yeah, we had heard that the private site adjacent to public place had been sold for approximately $50 million. So assuming that the site would be acquired in order to add it to the public place site, we were anticipating approximately a market rate price of $50 million for that, plus $50 million to design and develop the park sort of completely across the three sites.
So, sorry, what does that add up to? 100 million or 150 million?
100 million was our ballpark estimate.
Okay, but I'm assuming you don't have any funding sources or commitments to funding right now.
No, certainly not. I mean, I think that we would I think, you know, if you look at how other parks have been funded, such as like Brooklyn Bridge Park, there's a mix involved, you know, of like, I mean, certainly there are different models, you know, to fund parks. You could have like the city fund it itself. I think that, you know, we know that there have been budget cuts to the Parks Department. So we've been trying to think creatively about how a park could be developed and conceivably following some kind of hybrid model where you seek city funds, state funds, potentially philanthropic funds. I think could be a good outcome for raising the money for the park.
Okay. I think you answered this already, but in terms of the displacement of the affordable housing component of the development that's currently being contemplated by DCP on the site, your solution to that is to decrease the amount of market rate housing elsewhere and make up the difference with affordable housing to offset the loss on this site. Am I saying that right?
You know, we don't really have a solution for that. That was one idea that we were throwing out there. I think that, you know, it's not like a great position to be in, to be advocating for a different use in affordable housing. I think that, you know, we certainly feel that affordable housing is important. And I think a lot of people in the community, you know, feel that affordable housing is important too. I guess we're just saying that this site, you know, has had a plan in place to be a park for a long time and could be. And so maybe it makes sense to try to think about some options where you could keep the park and have affordable housing. We're just not sure that it is mutually exclusive. So that was one idea that we threw out there. You know, we do know that there is like a significant market rate component to the rezoning proposal. I thought was, hey, is it actually possible to build more affordable and have less luxury housing? We don't know the answer to that. But that was just one idea we're throwing out there.
Okay. Do you have the support of any local elected officials?
We don't have explicit support at this point, no. We've largely focused on seeking to understand how the local community feels about it. So we're just starting to, I think we're kind of just starting to do that local elected official engagement.
Okay, and I just want to add one other question to the list here. You mentioned in your funding that you could tap into National Grid's remediation funds, and I didn't quite understand that. If you could just link that, like, because I believe the coal tar cleanup is a challenge, but I'm not sure there's anything in your presentation that speaks to that cleanup as part of the park solution. So why do you think those funds would be available to build the park?
Well, we're not sure, but my understanding is that there are significant funds that have been set aside by National Grid specifically for the cleanup and remediation of the site. I don't know if that's something that perhaps the committee can confirm and maybe more knowledgeable than I, but our thinking was that if there are significant funds set aside, conceivably, perhaps National Grid may be amenable to dedicating some of those funds for park development as well. And I honestly am not sure how much of those funds are there. I had heard that it was in the range of tens of millions of dollars, but I'm not sure. Is that something that maybe I would pose that to the committee as well? Is that something that you are aware of?
Well, National Grid, and there are others on this call that can speak to this, is a PRP, as is the city and I think 30 other landowners around the canal, and they are required to fund the Superfund cleanup. But it's not, and that's what they will do with the EPA oversight. I'm just not clear how that money then becomes available for the development of a park, because that doesn't have anything to do with the cleanup, unless we're taking money away from the cleanup to create the park, or you think that there might be extra money left over to create the park once the cleanup's done.
Yeah, I think the latter version. I mean, I'm not aware of how much funds are available or how much are being used for the park. So I I think,
Well, there aren't any funds available right now for a park. The funds are solely dedicated to the cleanup. But anyway, we don't have to go down the rabbit hole on that one. I was just trying to understand if you knew something that maybe I didn't. So.
oh yeah, no, I think you're totally right. I think the point is that we haven't identified, funds to develop the park at this point, but are looking around for ideas and potential ideas. It seems like potentially the National Grid funds could be one of several potential options.
Okay. Committee members, any questions? You can do a chat, or you can raise your hand. And I'm not seeing everybody's face. All right, Glenn, can we unmute Glenn? Ty, or Glenn, can you do it?
I can unmute myself.
Okay.
I just want to say that I appreciate the effort here to assemble this presentation because this is something that has come up over and over again in Carroll Gardens over the last, I'd say, 30 years. This space was originally intended as public space to be used for recreation for the local community. And then it was forgotten. This happened back in the 70s. There was no money and there were just dreams. There were suggestions, ideas floated over the years, and then it was just forgotten. Maybe 15 years ago, the city decided maybe we can cash in on this, but there was really not much of a public process regarding taking something that was intended as recreation space and using it for something else. It was just assumed that it was going to be converted to housing. So I think it's important that we consider this independently of the zoning, because it's not like all of the manufactured zoned property along the canal. This is something unique. We own this, and Mac is right. If we lose this opportunity, it's going to be unlikely we will get such an opportunity again. Affordable housing can go almost anywhere. You can't put a park just anywhere. We would be forced to take private property in order to do that. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. There's a lot of comments coming across and I can't read all of them. If someone wants to just ask a question for the public, and first wait till we go to the public session, and then just do a text to me privately and just say, I'd like to ask a question, and I'll call on you. But you're across 4 screens, so just bear with me while I look for your name and stuff. Jerry, you got a question?
More of a, maybe even
Comment.
a question, but definitely a comment. I think that Glenn pretty clearly stated the history of this location. And it was actually 25 or 30 years ago that there was a group in Carroll Gardens that actually tried getting it made into a recreation area, not a park. My question to Mac is more like, since I don't see that your proposal is creating an area that would be designated as a park, zoned as a park, and thus alienated and would be there forever. Right now, the term public place guarantees absolutely nothing. It's a term that's kind of amorphous. So have you, I know you said you were looking into the New York State alienation process. What have you found so far, and how do you see to make sure that if this goes through as a park, it stays as a park?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I'm not a legal expert. I just have read the documentation from when it was officially designated as for public use. And I think that the evidence really lends itself to the fact that it seems like the whole community and local elected officials really wanted this site to be used for open space and recreational space. So I'm not sure exactly how the parkland alienation process may apply. My understanding was if there was some kind of official zoning designation that that dedicated a site for open space and recreational uses, that had a bearing on its designation as parkland. And so I don't know the answer to that, but I think really what we're curious about is what the city's feeling, DCP, how they are thinking about it. Perhaps they're thinking about it the same way you outlined, in terms of it having less of a bearing. Perhaps they're thinking a different way. It'd just be interesting to hear, I think, from the city's perspective, since they're proposing the use change.
Have you had a chance to go look at the original Board of Estimate? Some of us remember that thing. The original Board of Estimate designation as public place, and do some more research on that?
I've read a number of documents, including Board of Estimate documents. I'm not sure if it's perhaps the specific one that you're referring to, but would certainly love to see those if you have access to them, to learn more as well. It sounds like you have quite a lot of knowledge about like the documentation and the open use designation. So I'd love to have the opportunity to learn from you on that.
The only other thing I'd add is I think you need to be a little bit more specific. And I like the presentation. I probably didn't say that. I think there's a desperate need in all of CB6 for more parks, more parkland. I think you need to take a look at what the ideal, how much park per 1,000 or whatever the formula is, and show how much underserved this community board is in parks, even with the Red Hook Recreation Area. But I also think that the balance between a park and affordable housing is a tough one. And I'd like to see how you resolve that.
It makes total sense. Yeah, I would just say that with respect to your latter point, you know, we aren't the decision makers. We're just providing an idea that we think like a lot of the community supports. And so I think that it's important to say that, you know, as part of the public process around the site, which I think is sort of the intent of the process. With respect to the former point on quantity of open space per capita, I agree. That's something we can look at. We know that Gowanus is underserved for open space. One thing we are trying to stress is the quality of open space is also important. You can create quantity of open space, but you may not necessarily have the same quality, which is hard to achieve. And having a large park is really a nice way to do that. So both quantity and quality are important. But thank you. I've well noted your advice. Thank you.
Other committee members?
David, if I could jump in. First, Matt.
Sorry, who's talking?
This is Alex Sheringbeck.
Oh, hey, Alec. Okay, sorry.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was really, it's lovely. And it's lovely to see a group of people in the community who care so much about it coming together to propose what its future should look like. And I think it was thoughtful. What I'm struggling with is that the very things that make this site an attractive space for a park are what make it an attractive space to build around 900 units of somewhere between 74% and 100% affordable housing, which is the proposal that's on the table from the city. You know, there's publicly owned land in a site of this size. It's rare to come by. It's the same thing that makes it a special place for a park. And it's difficult to say that we're not sure how this would impact the rest of the affordable housing proposal, because we know precisely how it would affect the rest of the affordable housing proposal. It would dramatically reduce the amount of affordable housing that's created by the Gowanus rezoning. And in the area where we have the opportunity to do the most affordable housing with the least luxury, because we don't have high costs of site acquisition because it's publicly owned already. You don't need the luxury units, which we all want fewer of, I'm guessing, to cross subsidize the affordable. That's coming from the land itself. So that's where the rubber hits the road here. You know, the cost is on the table. The cost is very obvious, and it's not obvious how by any means you would make up that desperately needed affordable housing in the rest of the rezoning proposal. And so that's my reaction. It would obviously be a lovely park, but we have such a desperate affordable housing crisis. And so it is a comment that I'm making, but I would like to put it back to you because, you know, I think you've been demurring on what the effects on the proposal would be. And I think it's very concrete what the effects on the rezoning would be. It would be a dramatic reduction in the amount of affordable housing that can't be made up elsewhere.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really fair point. I mean, it's a valuable site because it's land, and I feel like to some extent, you know, in New York, people are just trying to figure out what to do, like with a limited supply of land. Affordable housing is really important. That's for sure. I think that open space is also important. And so I think that, you know, we're not saying what should be, we're just saying that we should think carefully about how we want to what we want to put where, you know, particularly as this one site was initially set aside specifically to be open space and used for recreational purposes. So I put that out first. I'd say second, you know, the Gowanus rezoning proposal is very imaginative in a lot of ways. You know, it's saying, it's looking at something that is now and saying, hey, this could be totally different. We could reimagine this in a lot of different ways. And so I think that, you know, just in the way that a lot of thought and care and like visionary thinking was put into the Gowanus rezoning proposal, perhaps we could harness that same level of imagination and vision to think about ways in which you might be able to increase affordable housing in a different way. So when you say that the impacts on affordable housing are very clear, I'm not so sure about that. I would sort of respectfully say, you know, maybe there are other ways to address affordable housing that we haven't thought of, and maybe there aren't. But like, perhaps it could be good just to think about it a little bit and come up with some ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I don't think
Thank-
it's such a great idea to always have affordable housing lumped together. I think it's kind of important that people living in affordable housing be mixed in with everybody. I don't think it's such a great idea to just shove people into projects or so if there were more density in the rest of the area and then the new developments had to have a little bit more affordable, it might be possible to have a park.
Thank you, Judith. Glenn, I think you wanted to respond. I don't know if it was what Alec was saying or what Mac was saying, but if you can go ahead.
This is Dan. Before you do that, I just want to say hi to everybody. This is Daniel. Sorry I'm joining late. I just got off of a work
Daniel.
call. It's great
Hi,
to see
Daniel.
all of your faces.
Good to see you.
I just wanted to point out one thing, two things actually. The trade-off, if you will, between a park and housing should take into consideration the quality of the land there. And it happens to be the most polluted, contaminated site along the Gowanus Canal, which makes it less valuable for housing, more risky for housing than for use as a park. And that should be a consideration here, especially since the state Department of Environmental Conservation has decided to do a lesser cleanup than was originally anticipated, which means more chemicals will be left on site and the proposed residents will be exposed to them over time. And we don't know what the effects are going to be, although they're not likely to be good. The other thing is we are still in a COVID pandemic and will not understand the effects on our city, on our buildings, residential and commercial, over time. And this should also be considered before we make a sweeping change to this area, as if COVID never happened. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. Any other committee members? I have a few people from the public who'd like to speak here. Okay, Bob, go ahead. I think you're on mute, Bob.
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. I don't think it should be a discussion on whether or not we have to give up affordable housing or have the park has to pay for it, as Al described. This was an area that was decided many years ago that it was set aside for public use for parkland or that kind of use. And the decision should be which one or the other, not, and it doesn't have to be decided on which one would pay for what, more or less. I think if the community thinks it should have stayed parkland, that's fine, and go from there, not having to then decide, well, you know, which one is cheaper or which one does what. That's all.
Thank you, Bob. I'm actually going to ask Richard Barak to say a few words. Just some points of clarification on the part. Richard, are you there? I think you're muted.
I had to modify
there you go.
to get to the screen that I could unmute. So first of all, the public place designation is different than if it was a mapped park. So at the time in the 70s, they did not map it as a park. A public place then would not therefore need to go through the legislature to have a change. A public place is basically a placeholder for public interest. So it allows the process now to consider uses that would be deemed in the public interest, consistent with the idea of public place. From what we saw in the scoping, there seems to be, I would expect to see some map land on part of this public place site, because there was looking to have an extension of Bond Street curving around back to Smith Street. So that land to the east, I was speculating when we see the certified application, we might actually see some parkland as part of this. So streets, you could deem to what extent you deem them serving public interest. And then there was talk, and I know HPD has a participant listening, some of the site in the last presentation that was at the community board, probably around March or so, February, showed that they were looking to reserve some of the site for a likely public school, which again, some may deem to be a public interest use. So those are some of the things to keep in mind in terms of looking at the proposal. And the southern site, because it's not city owned, if there really was strong interest in the end of the process, what would have to happen is that site would be removed from the rezoning and remain in limbo, where it still has commercial rights for a significant amount of time before any effort could be made towards parkland jurisdiction.
Thank you, Richard. Joanna, did you, sorry, I want to call on, well, did you want to respond to that, Mac, or?
Oh, no, I just want to say that was super helpful. Thanks.
Okay.
One thing that I thought of while you were speaking, Richard, was just in terms of the current zoning designation, that's something that would need to be modified, or is that something that needs to go through a process in order to develop the site in different ways? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Two things. Number one, the public place designation, which is not a zoning designation, it's a city map, street map designation. That has to go away to develop the site in certain ways. The existing zoning that you have there, when you have manufacturing districts, when there's an M1 district, that does allow park as use. I'm trying to remember, I believe it's not an M1, I believe it's an M2 district over there. So the zoning, the underlying zoning right now allows for a wide range of retail to warehousing to actually making things, industrial uses, with a pretty suburban parking requirement.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to call on Joanna.
Hi, all. This is a really interesting conversation, and I'm kind of grappling with how far along this process is and how exciting this new idea is. And I'm just, trying to balance it. A couple things I wanted to bring up were just new information that we have since the most recent iteration of the Gowanus plan came from planning. And Glenn mentioned it, we have a pandemic. We also have a lot more data on our climate crisis dance card. We know now things we didn't even know 6 months ago. And I just wanted to raise, the environment as a member of this conversation that doesn't have a voice. I think that, the city should seriously be looking at this site in a way that can most mitigate the climate disaster that's knocking on our door. If there's a way for the affordable housing aspect, which is very needed and very well thought out at this point, to move forward in a way that incorporates as much open, wet sponge as possible, that's great. But I think at this point, open land and land that has been curated by naturalists to provide defenses against flooding, it's pretty precious at this point. And I think a park has a better chance of being designed with that in mind, just from my novice angle on things. And I'm not sure how involved everyone on the call has been in the whole Gowanus rezoning process, but just to know that there are very powerful interests at play here, and there's more money than we can even dream of at play on the real estate front. And so, having the hope that the land can be used best for both the people's open land recreational use, but also preserving the planet, there's a lot to push against. So just for everyone to know that's what's behind the scenes. And there are a lot of people trying to push forward the Gowanus rezoning plan as we speak right now. They want it done yesterday, regardless of what happened to us all in the last 6 months. So thanks all.
Thank you, Joanna. I'm going to open this up to the public because I know some people have been asking or waiting patiently. And Edward Delman, you're the first one I had here with a question. Do you want me to ask it for you, or do you want to?
It's okay. I can ask it myself.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. And also thank you, Mac, for that great presentation. That was really helpful. It's a really imaginative idea. I guess my question is whether you are aware of similar plots in the area that are either city owned or would also be able to be purchased and used for either no or zero cost. Because I think what sort of going off of what Alec was saying, like that's the attraction of the site, that it is publicly owned land, and obviously land is the most expensive asset that goes into any of these projects. And so I wonder, like, if there are other like publicly owned lots, even if they're not as large, like in the area, whether those could be used for affordable housing. I'm just not sure what your understanding is of sort of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I'm not sure, I guess, is the short answer. And it would be great to find out. Like, I would welcome the opportunity to talk to people that do know if those kinds of resources might exist. I think it's a great point, and I don't have a great answer for you on it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Edward. Dan Miller.
Hi, I want to say thank you to the committee members for letting me give a comment here. And I've noticed a lot of people saying that, like, trying to kind of have it both ways, right? That we need that we need a lot of park space and that we need housing. And as long as we're only talking about this particular plot, then it seems like the trade-off is kind of zero-sum, right? It's either going to be a park or it's going to be housing. And a lot of people think that we need both. So what I'd ask is, if you are in support of this being a park, why not affirmatively seek out opportunities to upzone the rest of the neighborhood? Why not go to some of those brownstone blocks just to the east or just to the west in Park Slope and Carroll Gardens and say, let's upzone these, let's allow much more dense housing here? Would MAC or you specifically, or would the committee in general, be in favor of upzoning the broader neighborhood as a way to make up for the housing that we would lose if this site were to become a park?
I will just say, speaking on behalf of the committee, that I don't think we've established any formal position on that. It's a valid question and one that we will, consider. Mac, I don't know if you have a response to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really interesting idea. I would say that we haven't really considered that option. To be honest, we're a small grassroots organization. Our main focus has been primarily on this site, public place, which we think would be an ideal site for a park. And so frankly, it's only been more recently that we've kind of started to become more involved in the broader discussions about the rezoning and affordable housing, just because that is tied into the whole thing. So I think it's a really great question. We haven't thought about it in great detail.
Okay, thank you. Margaret, you have a question? Margaret still here? Okay, I'm going to move on. Next person was Matthew Fairley.
Hi, thank you to the committee for having this, and thank you. And I want to compliment Mac on that presentation and his engagement in the community. But I do want to say that I think, as much as I hate to say it's a zero-sum game, I think that particular part of land would be better used as affordable housing. The city needs affordable housing on an epic scale, and that is certainly a very good place for it. It's right next to transportation. It's a block from a subway station. It's right where to go. And I'd just like to, add on to what other people have said, that, public use does not automatically mean a park. Public use means a school. Public use means fire departments. Public use means things that serve the public, and affordable housing serves the public. Affordable housing serves the people of the city that desperately needs it. So as much as I really am impressed with what you've done, Mac, and I please keep doing it. I think you have a lot of questions you still need to answer. But I just want to say right now, I think the best way for us to move forward is for affordable housing on that spot here. And I hope the committee will take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
I'd
Rita?
just like to say, I thought that was really well said and totally respect that opinion and like the points you made. I think you have totally valid points. And so we're just presenting a different perspective and opinion. And it's kind of the idea of this, I feel like, of this public process. So I want to say thanks for relaying that. And
Hey, Mac, you could help me out. I have to move this meeting along. So unless someone asks you a specific question, maybe we could.
Sure. Understood.
Thank you. Rita Miller, are you still with us?
I am here.
Okay.
Hello.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Well, I have comment and I guess some questions too. First thing is I completely disagree with this idea that affordable housing or a park are the two choices. I don't think that anybody should be living on that property. I'm not a scientist, but I've been reading a great deal about the vapor intrusion problems, et cetera. And I asked the committee to take a look at some of the things that came out of Greenville, South Carolina. Their Department of Health absolutely recognizes the danger of putting buildings on top of these properties. There is the Environmental Science and Technology Vapor Intrusion Study going on, where they show various methods of how to build more safely, they think, on some of these properties. And I didn't see anything in any of conclusions that match anything at all that they were doing on public place prior to the change to the plan of the remediation. Besides that, I think Mac's idea is wonderful. I think it is an appropriate usage of that site that will be contaminated in perpetuity. And I think that having people live on it is a terrible idea, but having it as an open space area is a wonderful idea. I also think it conforms with the legal disposition of recreational use. I heard what Rich said, and instead of my picture, what you have up there is the City Planning Commission, last couple of paragraphs. And that talks about once that proposed map change was done, which was completed in July of 1974, the property would go to the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs Administration. Even if it never made it into that particular department, so that there was never any obligation to have any kind of public review of removing from there to another department. What I don't understand is how were the RFPs for this housing thing ever even initiated when the site was mapped for recreational use? What department it was in doesn't matter. It specifically says recreational use. So how is it like okay to issue RFPs no matter how many years later, excuse me, I have an allergy, no matter how many years later, without a public review process in order to remove it from a recreational use disposition to housing? And please don't say they're going to put a little tiny strip of gas and some grass and some weeds somewhere and call that the park. So I guess that's directed to Rich.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Sorry, I'm not sure I'm going to say this right. Ankur Dalal?
Hi, yes, thank you for your comment. I just wanted to echo some of the comments made by other people in support of affordable housing and this site. I am a former CB6 resident, but I actually had to move out because I was essentially priced out. My income went down many years ago, and when it did, I could no longer afford the neighborhood. CB6 is one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the country. And I think a big part of it is a lack of market rate and affordable housing. And I would strongly support creating more affordable housing for the neighborhood. I think that's the most important thing to do. If there are struggles between a park and affordable housing, I think we should pick affordable housing over a park. And if you want to have both, I strongly support some of the comments made earlier about increasing density in other places in the project. I do not agree with giving up some of the market rate units in other parts of the project, because I think those units are necessary to fund and subsidize the affordable housing. But I think you avoid a lot of that problem with this site because the land is already owned by the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Encore.
David, well,
Yeah.
David, Mark Shames, give me
Yeah.
a minute.
Sure, Mark, please.
I just want to thank everybody who came because I'm going to hop off of the call. I appreciate all the comments. I have a long history myself with regard to Gowanus. I sort of have an understanding of why public place was designated that is somewhat different from the understanding of other people in terms of its designation to stop something else rather than for a specific use, but we can get into that some other time. And I thank you all, and we will consider all the options that are in front of us. Bye.
Thank you, Mark.
Are we going? Are we going to have some zoning matters, or is the meeting?
We have one landmarks.
Landmark.
Yeah, but I have, I think, one other person to call on, which is Toby Hyde. Toby, you still with us?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Okay.
First of all, I think Congress.
It's a little hard to hear you, Toby.
Sure. Current resident of CB6, and I think Ankur said it nicely about the need for affordable housing. But is in terms of process, does the board anticipate or the committee anticipate taking a official action tonight or in the coming? What happens next after this presentation?
There will be no official action tonight. This is just a presentation by Mac and Gowanus Lands, just for the committee to become familiar with the project. I think for most of us, it's the first time we're seeing it, and we will consider it going forward. And then we'll, if there's a position we want to take on it, we'll take a position. But right now, we have no position.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'm just looking over on my chat screen here. And I'm sorry, I hope, Tally?
Yes, hi, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I appreciate everybody's comments. I particularly appreciate the enthusiasm for affordable housing, and I think that I would support that. The concern here is building affordable housing in a toxic floodplain on a polluted plot of land. The question is whether this is the right place to put it, as opposed to somewhere that is not in one of the most fragile ecosystems facing climate change's massive risks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tally. I have one other person to call, and I would ask that we wrap this up because the committee does have some other business to conduct tonight, and it's getting dark out, and some of us need to get home for dinner. So I appreciate if anybody's just repeating stuff that's been said before, just you can let us know via emails. But I'm going to call on Ken A.
Hi, thank you for your presentation and taking the time to listen to comments. I'm going to echo and I'm going to add to the support for the affordable housing element. Affordable housing is extremely rare in the city and in the district, and we all have seen the statistics for the lotteries for people getting into affordable housing. And then to add to people's points about the environmental aspect, you know, as this land is developed, it can be developed for safety, and it can also be developed for resilience, climate change resilience. So I want the board to consider that resiliency against flooding can be part of the plan to develop affordable housing here.
Thank you, Ken. So thank you, everybody. Mac, judging by the chats, you have a lot of fans, and I would encourage everybody to reach out to Mac, and Mac reach out to them, because I think, as Mark or maybe Jerry pointed out earlier, the presentation could use some maybe more rigor. I'm just speaking personally, and there's a lot of people here who have a lot of history of the community, and I think Marlene pointed out the NRD assessment, restoration of natural resources that could be a potential source of funding. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for you to build out your proposal more strongly. And I hope everybody got Mac's email. Mac, if you want to just say what your email is one more time, that would probably be helpful.
Sure. Yeah, it's gowanuslands@gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat too. I just wanted to say thank you to you, David, and the other CB6 Land Use Committee members for putting this on. Really a great opportunity to share this idea with you. So just want to say thanks for hosting us and the great questions and feedback.
All right. Thank you, Mac. Okay, the committee is now going to consider a landmarks application. We'll take a few seconds here just to catch our breath.
David, while you're catching your breath, I just want to encourage everyone to read through the chats. There's a lot of really good comments, links, and opinions.
Agreed. Is the applicant here for 611 2nd Street?
I am here, yes, thank you.
Okay, Mark, thank you for being very patient.
I enjoyed the presentation.
Glad. Ty, do you want to put up the project? This is a, sorry, let me just announce it formally. This is a proposal for a second-story addition on the rear of a building above an existing one-story addition at 611 2nd Avenue, plus a penthouse room on the existing roof.
It's 2nd Street there, just to be clear.
Is it 2nd Street or 2nd Avenue?
2nd Street.
Okay, I guess whatever I took a screenshot of said 2nd Avenue. My apologies. Yeah, I guess that doesn't sound like a landmark district. Okay. 2nd Street.
Right.
So take it away. Yep.
Thank you. This is a building between 8th Avenue and Prospect Park West on the north side of 2nd Street. The proposal is to, as was said, to build an extension above the existing extension on the rear of the building, and a penthouse room on the roof adjacent to the existing penthouse, which is on the left side. Next slide. So this is just the Landmarks Commission Historic District map that they require, showing that little black dot is where the building is located within the Park Slope Historic District. Here you see the project location at 611 2nd Street. It's the middle building that you see labeled as 611 2nd Street. And as you see, there is a roof extension in this slide from the back on the right side of the building, and on the slide on the right and to the left side of the building to the south of the building. So that would be the location of the rooftop penthouse. And on the lower part of the building in the back, you see the one-story extension, which we're proposing to build an extension above that. Next slide. These are just some existing photographs of the rear of the building. The white brick area is where we're proposing to vertically extend that and have a one-story extension above it to enlarge the master bedroom suite. Next slide. These are some existing rooftop photos. The wall on the left is the existing penthouse from the building next door, and our proposal brings the penthouse on our roof further back from the street, but adjacent to it. Next slide. And this is a block diagram showing the rooftops of the building, and labeled in green, you can see the rooftop penthouse adjacent to the proposed penthouse that on our block. This on Prospect Park West, as well as 8th Avenue, you'll see 4-story buildings and some penthouses along that block. This is the front facade of the building, and as you can see, we're far under the maximum zoning allowable height of 60 feet, and you will not see the penthouse as you will see in the mock-up presentation from the street. It's, as I said, it's about 28 feet back from the front facade. Next slide. This is showing the rear of the building with the extension on the 2nd story above the existing 1-story, as well as the penthouse up on the roof. This is a 3D model, again showing the existing condition on the left with the penthouse that's built next door to our building, and the model on the right shows the proposed penthouse on our building. Same idea from the rear. The existing is on the left. As you can see, to the left of our building, there's already an extension on the 2nd floor of the adjacent building, and now we're proposing an extension on that 2nd floor above the existing. The reason it's set back from the face of the building on the 1st floor extension is because of the zoning, which requires 30-foot rear yard. Next slide. Again, existing, basically existing and proposed. Existing on the top row and proposed on the bottom row. Well, that's next slide. Another angle of the rear, existing and proposed. It's basically the same model, only from different angles, which Landmarks likes to see, from different angles, which is why we did it this way. The side elevations of the existing north elevation and the proposed elevation on the right, as well as the sections of the building. We try to basically match the building with the extension on the 2nd floor and bring it up and basically match the opening of the fenestration with glass, similar to what they had now. Next slide. This is just some zoning information and site plan of the building. On the right, you can see the site plan of what the footprint of the penthouse is, as well as the 2nd story that's hatched in. And on the left, you see a section of the building showing the line of sight from the person across the street, and you can see the angle, and that will not be visible from the stoop across the street. This is all as of right in terms of zoning. There's no variance required. The reason, obviously, it's a landmark district, so we're going to landmarks, but we're not asking the building department for any variances. It's all floor area, open space, and height are all as of right. Here's floor plan showing the 2nd story.
Mark,
Yes.
sorry, we don't need to talk about any of the interior spaces. We're just here to look at the historic relevance.
This is in the presentation, but I'll go quickly through it. So this is the mock-up. Well, this is a zoning diagram again, showing the zoning. The zoning is compliant, and this shows the footprint again of the penthouse and the rear extension. Next slide. This is a zoning diagram showing we're within the zoning of the 770 zoning. Next slide. This is where landmarks, where Liv asked me to take the photos around the neighborhood, basically around the block, showing whether the mock-up can be seen from any public thoroughfare. And in the next few photos, you'll see photos of that she asked for. There's no visibility from the mock-up. This was the mock-up that we built, showing the room outline. Here's another picture of that mock-up. And these are the photos. I won't take too much time with them because obviously from the front or from the sides, you do not see the mock-up. It's not visible from any of the photos the 11 photos that she asked for. So we could flip through these, of the different spaces. That's number 4, that's number 5, from Prospect Park West. Looking west is number 6. Number 7 is the corner of 2nd Street and 8th Avenue. Number 8 is 2nd Street between 7th and 8th Avenue, looking back down the street. Number 9 and 10 is from 1st Street and 8th Avenue, looking east. And number 11, she asked for a shot from 1st Street, which obviously there's a building in front of it, so there's no way to see any of the addition that we're proposing. And that's it. Thank you very much for allowing us to give you this presentation.
All right, thank you, Mark. So Mark, just so you understand the rules, right now we'll have Q&A that you can answer. And once there's it's sort of informal right now because of the pandemic, but once we have a motion, the committee just discuss it amongst themselves. And unless someone asks you a question specifically, you would not be able to speak during that time.
Okay.
So that being said, does anybody on the committee have any questions? And I am having a hard time just because of presentations I'm seeing, if anybody's raising their hand or anything. Ty, I don't know if you can see.
Yes, Bob.
All right, Bob, is that you?
Personally, I think it's too big and large. I don't particularly like it that big, but you've got it next door, so I don't think it's something that we should be looking at as being wrong at this point. I'm not sure I was for the one next door either. So I don't see a problem of the size, considering where it is and the placement of what's there. I do have a question about, I'd like to see the back elevation, please, Ty.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah. Mark, if you know the page number, it might help him find it quickly.
I'm not sure which page.
Okay, no, just if you have to know. What I'm getting is to, and I wanted to double check on it because you went by it quickly, was the, and the only place I saw it was the actual drawing. Okay,
there.
That's good, yeah. I don't mind I do mind the railings up on top also, but I could live with it because that's what we've been doing. But I don't like the idea that the railing goes past the roof line of the extension. I think that the corner, and I'm doing it with my arrow and realize you're not seeing it. I'm thinking that the arrows are on everybody else. But the where the railing goes past it on the right side of the building, I don't think that's appropriate for the building. I don't mind it.
In front of the chimney there, Bob, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Mark, is that a Juliet balcony or something?
No, it's just a balcony above the extension, flat roof balcony. It's not it's a real deck. I can show you the floor plans. So I'd have to bring it back. I could cut it short of the chimney, but is that what you're objecting to, Bob? Where
I'm
the
talking
railing
about
goes?
it, the third floor, not the extension
Yeah.
on top. I'm talking about
Right.
that railing or that
Right.
porch, that deck, whatever you want to call it, shouldn't be bigger than the roof of the extension.
That's set back. I have to look at the plan, but yeah, it will be the same as the extension. That's correct. That might be drawn further. The railing should not go past the extension. I agree.
All right.
Okay, other questions?
Yeah, what is the material on the exterior of the penthouse that's visible from your
The
rear yard?
penthouse is cementatious, cement type siding, which will keep the weight. You know, it's like a board, hardy board type of finish.
So is it going to look like vinyl siding?
No, it will look like hardy board. Are you familiar with the hardy board finish?
Yeah,
Like
hardy board kind of looks like vinyl siding.
They have panels. It's like a panel. It's not like a vinyl siding. They have very nice recessed panels that look like lines, you know, with notches in it. It's not. It's their architectural series. It's not meant to be like an overlap siding. No.
Okay, other questions?
David?
Yeah, do you feel like making a motion or are you asking a question?
I just want to make sure, Mark, you do understand what Bob was getting at about the railing on the top of the extension, the new extension, that it shouldn't go past the extension. And you did say that was an error in the drawing, right?
I did say that. Let me double check the plan.
I assume though our motion still should say that, even though.
I'm just want to make sure.
Yeah, I understand. That was for everybody else. I know you know.
Yes, that's correct, Jerry. It can't go past the extension. That was an error in the paste.
Okay.
Cutting and pasting of the magic computer.
Yes,
now.
and I understand. I just wanted to make sure I heard correctly.
Yes, you heard.
I would agree with Bob that the size is a bit much, but we do have a roof extension on the next door building. And you don't have to scroll. It's fine. And I think that I would make a recommendation. My motion is that we recommend to LPC that they approve the plans for 611 Second Street for both the front and the back. And with one slight condition to make sure that the drawings presented to LPC reflect the correct positioning of the railing on the top of the extension.
You can see here, Jerry, the railing.
I just want to make sure that's the motion.
All right, so Mark, so now there's a motion on the floor. So if do other committee members have any comments?
Is there a chance for public questions?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, hey. Were you going to speak, someone else?
I'm on the committee and I did have a question about the fenestration on the side of the extension to the rear, not the penthouse. And did we see a picture of what that's going to look like face on for the neighbor in the back? Just not sure if I missed it.
No, I don't think you saw a picture of it, but it's brick to match the existing extension.
It's all brick because on the
all
picture we're
brick.
seeing now, it looks like they're windows.
No, absolutely, it's all brick. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Okay, Daniel?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to know if there's if there are any neighbors who are here to comment, before we close the discussion to committee only.
Yeah, I live in the house next door.
Okay, well, let me just finish my comment. I mean, this committee is well acquainted with my views on these fairly radical expansions of the landmarked envelope of these properties, and I'm not going to belabor that here. So I'll just say that I'll be voting no on this one. But I do think we should hear from the neighbors.
Yeah, of course. Daniel Hurowitz?
Yes, I live in the house next door that also has the roof extension, so I'm not going to oppose this extension going up. But these are the first drawings that we've seen of the proposal. And just this image that's up here, it looks like the two roof extensions they look like they've become one building that are built together. And I'm just wondering, I mean, that might not be a landmarks issue, but I'm wondering if that's really how the building will be allowed to happen. Like, does the one building go right up to the wall of the next building?
Technically, no, but I'm going to allow Mark to answer that.
The existing, it will go right up to the wall of the existing building. It's not as large as your extension, so it's cut short. But the wall that's there now is half on our property and half on your property. So it will go right up to that wall, yes.
Mark, I think you may have a seismic separation issue there. But it's not much, but I would take a look at that.
Okay.
Any other questions from the community? Sorry, I can't see very much here on the screen when the presentation's up. So shout out if you'll
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yes, Carol Crutzen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm on 613. I'm on the other side, okay? When I moved into the house, my 613 over 50 years ago, that extension was there, okay? I have the only extension that's on that entire block. I didn't realize, I thought that was granddaddied in, and I didn't realize that people can make an extension now, just like that. Is that true?
It is true if it conforms with the zoning.
Uh-huh. And what about blocking my, view and sun from, because now I have a wonderful view, of course, up the block.
You're talking about on the side?
Yeah, correct.
I mean, you could certainly express your concern to Mr. Lipton, but it is their property, and they as long as they do it as of right, they're allowed to do that.
Okay.
Any other questions in the community? Any other questions from the committee?
Yes, I don't believe we had a second for Jerry's motion. And I would just like to ask that the motion specify which extension we're talking about when we express concern over the railing. The back or the roof?
Glenn, I thought I was clear. It's the back extension, a new extension that goes that juts out from the parlor floor, and we're referring to the top of that extension. The railing on the...
May I speak?
I just wanted to make sure that was clear because I didn't hear it in your motion.
I did make it.
Okay, I didn't hear it.
It's okay. You're right, we do need a second.
I have another question before it moves forward. Regarding the doors on the penthouse and on the third story, I feel like there's a lot of different fenestration going on. You have 1/1 and then all these multi-pane things, and then the doors are a whole solid. Just maybe to consider the visual impact, maybe find a solution for the doors that is more unified with other things on the building.
Sure, we'll look at that.
Just consider, yeah, thanks.
So do we have any other comments, or does anybody want to second the motion?
I have a comment about the roof. I don't see the railing that's going to be on the roof. In the back, is it going to be vertical or rails or? Oh, okay. It's close. Now I can see it. Okay, thanks. Will it be black?
Mark, you can answer that.
It would be a dark color to match. Yes, it would be a dark color. I'm not sure if it's black or a dark bronze, but it will be a dark color. It's not going to be a white railing.
I'd like to second Jerry's motion.
All right. Thank you, Maddie. So I think I know where Daniel sits. Does anybody else object to Jerry's motion? Probably the easiest way to ask this.
Is this a time to make a friendly amendment? Or I don't know the process, but there's no mention of those side windows that are in the rendering on the interior extension, not the penthouse. I just think we should mention that that's meant to be a brick wall.
I think that's a good point.
I have no objection to that being added in.
Well, I'm sorry, which side windows are we talking about? Was there, was that a drawing error or was there something?
I don't know. The addition shows windows, basically the view that's being stolen, being transferred to the new addition. So I think that needs to be a solid wall. And that's what the owner says it's intended to be, but on the rendering that I was just looking at, I see windows.
I'm not sure if he meant the one that was showing the windows or the other side, which we can't see, so we should double check.
Yeah, but neither of those sides should have windows.
Why?
All right, so you're saying so Joanna, that's a friendly amendment that you if they're showing windows there, you don't want the windows there. I just want to make sure I understand this.
Correct. I mean, the owner verbally told us that they're not meant to be windows on that addition in the back, but the renderings show windows, and so I want
the owner of the neighboring properties.
No, the owner of the current property.
I'm sorry, Joanne.
Okay.
I'm the architect.
Yeah.
But I might have misunderstood your question. We do have a window on the side facade. It's a brick. I thought you were asking the
I was asking if
material. The material of the wall is brick, but we do have a window there. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mark. So Joanna, I understand. So Jerry, you're accepting this as a friendly amendment?
Yeah, the amendment, I guess, would be that friendly amendment that we would recommend the removal of the side windows on the new extension. Is that correct, Joanna?
Forgive my ignorance, but is there a rule that precludes the side window that you're objecting to?
There is not.
There's not a specific zoning rule, I don't think, but it's I guess back to prior points about what was there when the owner bought the house. Someone had that view, and then the other house is. They're going to be able to look into the neighboring house on the other side from that window if it proceeds. There's some privacy issues. I don't know. It doesn't sit quite right with me.
There's nothing. Just a point of clarification. Where that window is looking onto a roof of the next house. There's no occupancy of the roof next door.
So hold on.
Can we go back to the rendering?
Yes. Yeah, let's
go back to the rendering.
Yeah, let's go back and look at the drawing.
Yeah, I saw two little windows on the side. I might have been making them up, but.
While we're waiting for that, I'll clarify, I think, more. Alec, there isn't a ruling in terms of what can or can't be done, but we're supposed to have the look and feel of the backyard donut. And we've historically felt that the look and feel doesn't include windows on the sides. So I think that's what she's going.
Okay, so Joanna, are these the windows you're referring to?
I don't have an arrow, but I see two windows there those guys, yes.
All right.
So from that angle, you'll be able to look into the pink house, and I don't think that's appropriate for a after the fact addition.
So my reaction to this drawing, and again, I'd come at this pretty naive, is that the house with the gray cap also has side windows already. And so any privacy intrusion there would be neutral. And so, yeah, I wouldn't see a need to preclude a window there.
That side would be fine. I'm talking about the pink house.
I see. But,
So
you know,
I'm going to, Alec, if I could actually add something here. So Mark, you said there was one window. There's actually two windows. I would propose that maybe the window that's near the main wall of the house be removed.
Mhm.
The window that's out towards, the yard remain. It's very hard for someone to stand in that window and look into the rear of the pink house. Just the angle and the depth of the jam and stuff. It's that someone would have to be doing that almost intentionally. And I would propose, well, now this is when I need Daniel Cummer maybe on the process here, but that we don't accept that, Jerry, you don't accept the friendly amendment, and I have another amendment saying remove one of the windows and leave the window that's closer to the rear yard.
Which window are you talking about accepting?
The window that's closest to us. The window that's closest to the balcony, the deck, the
The one
railing.
that's in the farthest in the rear.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
My understanding of the angles is that the one near the deck would have a better angle into the house. The one near the house would be looking into their own property, right?
Well,
I mean, and
yeah,
I know no one's
no,
intentionally planning for peeping Toms, but it's a
Well,
thought,
The people on the other block can see in from across the backyards. So it's not like.
Yeah, I just think presuming, I mean, the neighbor who spoke up about being on the other side, 613, the view directly out is being blocked, but there's a view cone, if you will, and they can see past the extension. And I don't think there should be tit for tat, that just because someone else lost their view, that this person can't put a window in. I don't understand that logic.
well, I will withdraw my acceptance.
And a blank wall doesn't look that great either. I think a bit.
I agree.
Yeah.
I would recommend that we sort of go in the middle, David. And it has two windows right now. I would recommend that the amended motion read also that we recommend one window on the side be placed in the middle, which would take care of everybody not looking in and looking out and still
That's exactly
provide.
what I was going to recommend. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Sounds good.
Put a single
Okay,
window,
so
That works for
to
me.
get some light into that room.
Hold on, Mark. Mark, we're having too many conversations. So thank you, Jerry. Bob Levine, did you have a comment?
I had a comment on the motion, and I agree with Joanna in terms of the side windows are usually bothersome for the neighbor, but it's more so when the window's on a lot line. And I think we're usually much more stringent on a lot line window. This window is back from the lot line and makes it a little harder to actually see in. So I don't feel that they're equivalent, and I have no problem with this sides because
Okay.
the building is down.
All right. So does anybody want to second the motion?
I do. I second it.
Thank you, Judith. Can we have a vote? All right. Who does not approve the motion? You put your hand up or do a chat. Alec, you do not approve the motion. Daniel, you do not approve the motion.
I'm sorry.
Opposed.
Are you talking about on your amendment or on the motion itself?
Yeah.
It's amended.
The motion where Jerry said go to one window instead of two.
We don't have to vote.
I
We
would
don't have to
vote against
on the amendment.
All right. So Alex voting against it. Daniel's voting
David.
against it.
David,
Who's
are we
calling me?
voting for the motion or the amendment?
Well, I thought you were making a new motion. Are you accepting a friendly amendment? Or are you making a friendly amendment to your motion?
I'm making my own friendly amendment that there be one window placed in the middle and the rest of the motion remains the same. And I thought we had a second to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't need a separate vote for it. It's part of the motion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were
I guess I
doing.
would also point out, I'm not sure this is, the window placement on this issue is particularly a landmark issue. other than the fact that I suppose that extension of the neighbor was part of the, grandfathered envelope that's being affected. But I'm opposed to the size of this entire project to begin with. So.
Okay, so we're voting on the motion.
Right.
Yes.
So I have 2 no's from Daniel and Alec. Are there any other no's? Glenn?
Yes. 3.
That's a no? Any other
That's a no.
no's?
I have a
That is
question
a
though.
no.
So Ariel?
We didn't step, so in other words, voting yes means we approve of it, but getting involved in designing where the window goes, which to me is ridiculous. So, I mean, I don't see that. I think a few people have pointed out that it's a little bit beyond our purview, I think, to start changing the window.
I withdraw my window issue if no one else on the committee has any issue with it. I would not like it as a neighbor. That was my
Look, I would say architecturally, I think a window centered in the wall rather than these 2 windows pushed to the edges just looks better. So that to me is historically relevant. It's a more balanced composition. That's my 2 cents.
I don't know that, are we supposed to be redesigning? I do think that there was the issue that Joanna brought up about just being neighborly, and it would be nice for the owner and the architect to talk to this neighbor. And if there's some adjustment that could be made with the neighbor, that would be nice, but that's beyond and above beyond landmarks. As far as landmarks goes, what they presented is fine.
I think we have a vote.
Can we have a vote? Can we just finish the vote?
I mean, and then once you start voting, the comments are finished.
Yeah,
The
so
amendment
Ariel,
around,
no, the motion. So I have 3 people against it right now. Alec, Glenn, and Daniel. Is there anybody else against the motion? And the motion is to make sure the railing doesn't extend in front of the chimney and replace the 2 windows with 1 window in the center of the, is that the west facing elevation? I think so.
Well, it's southwest. It's
Okay.
Southwest,
All right.
yeah, the west.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody? All right.
David, I can see that Charlie Piggott is voting no in the chat.
Is he on here?
Yeah.
Okay, so 4 no's. We have, so Jerry, me, Bob. I'm going to say your name, and if you disagree with me, just let me know. Joanna. No, I know. Joanna, Ariel, Maddie, and Judy say yes. Okay.
Was Debbie here? Was Debbie
so
here?
That's.
I thought it was her name.
All right, so the motion passes. We don't really have quorum, so I'm just going to tell Peter that we didn't have quorum, but that's what we voted for. All right. So I think that concludes this.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah, I'd like to make just a general comment for the new people, since I've chatted for so many years over it. The landmarks is the look and the feel of that donut, and we can define it as whatever way we want. So you could define it as not having side windows on the extensions. You don't have to. You could do whatever you want. But yes, we do have a say on the look and feel of what's back there. That's all I wanted to say.
David, are we concluded?
We are concluded. Actually, maybe we did have quorum. Ty, how many members do we have now?
I'm counting real quick.
There's 11 on this call. I thought there was only 10.
I counted 12 earlier.
Well, Mark left.
Wasn't Debbie here?
Yeah.
where's Pauline?
Pauline.
Where did Pauline go?
Pauline's no longer on.
Well, we had 11. Ty, you and I can email about this, but we had 11 votes. 7 yes, 4 no. So, okay, we are concluded.
Okay.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Nice to see everybody.
It was nice seeing you, everybody.
Nice, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Bye.
See you soon.